Good afternoon. My today's guest is Dr. Donna Strickland, and just one word would be enough to introduce her. This Nobel Laureate Dr. Donna Strickland, and that would be enough. But according to the format of our show, I would like to provide some brief information. I will share my screen. I hope I will be able to do that. Okay. I found them from the internet. I hope that it was legal. Dr. Donna Strickland is a professor in the Department of Physics and Astronomy at the University of Waterloo. She is one of the recipients of the Nobel Prize in Physics in 2018. Donna was born in Guelph in the Canadian province of Ontario. Her mother was an English teacher and her father an electrical engineer. Strickland earned a PhD in optics from the University of Rochester and Bachelor of Engineering from McMaster University. She was a research associate at the National Research Council Canada, a physicist at Lawrence Livermore National Lab, and a member of technical staff at Princeton University. In 1997, she joined the University of Waterloo, where her ultra-fast laser group developed high-intensity laser systems for nonlinear optics investigations. In 2018, Dr. Donna Strickland received the Nobel Prize in Physics for developing chirped pulse amplification with Gerard Moreau, her PhD supervisor at the time. Dr. Strickland was named a companion of the Order of Canada. She's a recipient of many, many awards, just a few of them. A Sloan Research Fellowship, a Premier Research Excellence Award, and the Cottrell Scholar Award. Again, it's many, many other awards and scholarships. I don't want to use too much time with this information. I want to leave more time to Dr. Donna. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for that. Very nice introduction.
Thank you very much for accepting my invitation. I know that you're very busy, even in summertime. I want to start with very kind of funny story. Our First Nations University organizes career fairs approximately once a year. In 2018, I had to make a presentation. Usually, in my presentations, I try to promote our science programs, science-related programs. And traditionally, the majority of my students are young ladies. So I decided to talk about a famous woman who graduated from science programs. And I prepared some materials about Marie Skłodowska-Curie, the Nobel Laureate, about Margaret Thatcher, the Prime Minister of Canada. She was also a science graduate. About our Governor General, Julie Payette. She was a science graduate. But my feeling was that it's not exactly what I want, because Marie Curie, she wasn't Canadian. Two others, great women, but they didn't make a career in science. And guess what? Just a few days left to my presentation, and Nobel Prize Committee makes announcements that Dr. Donna Strickland received the Nobel Prize in Physics. So that was kind of like bingo moment. That's a Canadian woman received the Nobel Prize in Physics. And I quickly tried to find some information about you on the internet. I believe I found one picture and few little information. And I found your paper that you published for Nobel Prize at 1985. And I talked about that to my students, and it was really exciting because it was kind of like news. Not too many people knew about that. It just happened. I imagine it was very inspiring for my students, very exciting for my students. But I'm not even asking you how exciting it was for you, but how you received that news. I know that officially, I think they give the call. But unofficially, how it happened, how you got that news that, oh, I got the prize?
They do phone you. It's out of the blue. It's not like you even know you're up for the prize. And it is always at 11 a.m. Swedish time. So that is here in the East, 5 a.m., right? So it would be even earlier in the morning for people out there, West. Yeah, and you get a call from the Royal Swedish Academy telling you that you won. And they tell, and for me, they said that I'm sharing it with Gerard and that we shared half and that Art Ashton was getting the other half, which, I was very happy about because Art, we all felt had deserved it many years ago. But yeah, it just comes right out of the blue. And so it is quite a shock to be woken up at 5 in the morning to be told that.
So that was the first time that I received that news. Yeah. I graduated from Baku State University. It's, if you don't know, that's the Azerbaijan Republic. It used to be part of Soviet Union. And another Nobel laureate in physics, Lev Landau, he was a student of our university, and he was in age of 14, and he was enrolled simultaneously in two departments, Department of Physics and Mathematics and Department of Chemistry. But then in 2 years, his family moved to another city. But we knew that Landau is ours. And later, when I was a student, one of Landau's students, he was our associate dean. In addition, Nobel brothers, they made lots of money in Baku because of the oil. So we all kind of like had a feeling that somehow we have some connection to Nobel Prize. But I mean, specifically when you do your PhD project, student project, every third person in my dorm was dreaming about Nobel Prize.
Really? Okay.
It's kind of like, somewhere. You received your Nobel Prize for your PhD project. I mean, I know that you published that your paper in 1985, and now, I mean, it's difficult to imagine all cell phones, eye surgeries without those lasers. It's we all kind of used some piece of your contribution, at least in cell phones. Everyone
at least in the cell phone,
yeah. I mean, some people have many cell phones. Did you have some kind of feeling in 1985 that about the significance of this war? Maybe not about the cell phones, but did you have some kind of feeling that this is something?
I would say we knew it was big. I don't think we knew it was big in that way, right? I think we knew we were changing the intensity scales of lasers. And even my PhD project then used that laser and showed that it was the way the light and matter interacted was different than the way we thought it was. And so I think we knew it was big, but at the time it was going to be, to really scale the laser up, was going to be in the big laser labs, right? The big laser fusion facilities or, defense weapon labs around the world. So there'd be like a handful of labs that would really build these things. And so from a science point of view, I think we knew it was going to be big. From a technological point of view, I'm not sure it was obvious right then. It was really at the same time, another type of laser was coming along called titanium doped sapphire. And, it was probably 5 years later where people started to mode lock it and make it a short pulse. And it was both able to make short pulses and store energy. Not as much as the glass laser, which is what I use, so it wouldn't be as big an energy, but that's okay because the pulses could be so much shorter and the power is energy per unit time. And that's what brought the laser, instead of from these great big labs, and I did work in a laser fusion lab at Rochester, right? These big labs, and bring them down to the university scale system. And once that happened, then it could explode, because now they were all over the world and people were doing all kinds of things with them. On top of that, you know, it also was like a couple of years after we first published it that Oscar Martinez came up with a way of not using the fiber stretcher, which is what I used, but a grading stretcher, which works way better. And all of them now use the grading stretcher, not the fiber stretcher, except for fiber CPA. So, I mean, there's a few other things that came along and made it work better and made it work on a smaller scale. And that could really just make it take off, right? So very few of us do like just everything by ourselves, right? So we're always just one link in a chain.
Yeah. Recently, I had the pleasure of attending the workshop about the water quality monitoring. And you were one of the organizers and the chair. It was remarkable that you gave it special attention to the Indigenous aspect of the water monitoring. Mm-hmm. And could you please talk about your role in that program and the monitoring program, and in future, how are you going to consider the Indigenous knowledge in water quality monitoring?
Okay, well, this is a part, this came out of my work with the Optical Society. I was president of the Optical Society in 2013, which is based in the US. It's now an international optics society. And around 2012, the United States, the National Academy of Sciences put out a document about the importance of photonics. And they had done it years before, nobody had done anything. And so OSA really felt like, okay, we need to do something to let all the governments know how important photonics is. And they started up a national photonics initiative in the United States when I was president. And I couldn't be part of it because that's not my nation, right? But I said, okay, I get that we're probably half American in this organization, so you guys get that started. But when you're ready to go international, I want to be part of it. So I'm on the International Photonics Advocacy Coalition for OSA. But then when we decided to go international with it, we couldn't decide, you know, you can't go to each government and tell them their own specific, you know, way photonics is important. So we wanted to come up with one way that would resonate with basically all the governments in the world to highlight how important photonics is. And it was the Paris Accord. It was 2015 now. So Paris Accord was coming online. And so we said, all right, photonics is so important to measure air quality, water quality, just polluters, the effects of pollution, you name it, you know, photonics is there and optics is there. And so we decided to do that. So then that was the meeting that you came to was the third in a series that we've had now in Canada. The first was back in 2017. Then we moved on to, into Boucherville in 2018, and we were just gathering as many people as we could, and we were all over the map a little bit. So then we decided it was time to move out west, and this I'm getting to why the Indigenous now, because when you look, you know, I only know optics, so when I started to look at the environment, that is a pan-Canadian effort, which means that if you're going to do something with the environment, it really has to be looked at federally, provincially, and and First Nations, okay? All of them are obviously affected by the environment, and all of them have a role in playing in protecting the environment. So we decided we would go out west to make sure we didn't just stay east. But that time I said, okay, we still haven't found Indigenous people. And this is really where it came about, is that, you know, we're all trying to expand and make sure we have the right group of people, but we all only know so many people. And I have to say, I do not know an Indigenous photonics person. Sad to say, but this is just the truth of it. anyway, so we went searching and we found your university, and we found that you have an environmental science part of your university. So that's why I reached out to you. And the idea is that not only is it the pan-Canadian responsibility, but when we're talking about water quality, obviously the Indigenous people have probably felt the problems of our water quality more than any other group of people in Canada. Also, we want to eventually get to the point where everything is being monitored, which means that within Indigenous communities, it's going to be, it's somebody's responsibility for not only taking the measurements and monitoring them, but recording them and getting the data out there. So we need everybody involved. And we hope everybody wants to be involved. Again, I think with most areas of science, we need to hear everybody's point of view as well, right? And so not only what we are doing to the environment, but what we see as the effects of what we're doing to the environment. So that's what kind of help we're going to be looking for.
Yeah. When you prepared that presentation and for this interview, of course, I tried to collect the information about you, and in most of the cases, I saw the word first. The first Canadian woman Nobel Laureate, first woman physicist in 21st century, and first full-time woman professor in physics at Waterloo.
But that's not true. If you saw that, then that's not true.
I don't know. That's what I found.
Oh, I guess first full-time. Yeah, okay, that's right. The first woman was actually half-time. All right.
Yeah, full-time. They mentioned that the first
full-time.
Yeah, first full-time. So many times I saw that full-time. But the one thing is that you agree 100% that you are for many years you've been teaching. You are an educator, and along with your scientist career. Nowadays, because of this pandemic, we have to change many things. We have to change our teaching mode. And in fact, this teaching mode that we used before this pandemic, it started about 1,000 years ago, many years ago. I see, definitely not everyone is happy. I mean, not all students, not all teachers are happy with changing this mode, maybe because we are kind of forced to change. But from other side, I have some observation. In 2014, I developed the online physics course, introductory physics course. And I see every year, even without this pandemic, every year I have more and more students register. I see many students now prefer to find some video information instead of reading the book. Recently, on September, I'm going to give some example to my students about lightning rod. I found the one paper, an article. The other was a professor of Stanford University. I just asked her if she could talk to my students about the story of that invention. And she kindly agreed, accepted my invitation. I cannot imagine that it would be possible before this pandemic. I mean, your lectures, my students will watch this video, and not only in Canada, I mean, I imagine many students in developing countries who wouldn't be able to move in Canada or to other developed countries to large universities. They would be able to attend your lectures people like you. What do you think after this pandemic? I think it will happen. We will talk about after pandemic. Do you think we will change our teaching format and even philosophy? Or do you think we have passed the point of no return, or everything will go back to the previous format?
No, well, first of all, if people go to the trouble to make a really good online, it's out there and it should stay out there. I found it very difficult to teach. I did teach online this summer to the grad course. I found it harder to do. I think there is something nice about being in a classroom, and it's easier to carry on a conversation and really get to sort of the root of it. On the other hand, I think, especially even for not only teaching, but going to conferences, we've all noticed that the conferences and meetings can be attended by so many more because we don't have to pay to travel. We don't have to worry about getting a visa to go to some other country. We don't have, So I'm hoping that what comes out of this is a hybrid model. I don't see any reason why we can't have some people in a room and a big screen and people coming in on the side. And so hopefully when we go ahead and teach, that's even still the case, is that the camera's on you, but people are in the classroom with you, and some people can be somewhere else and some people can be in the class. But like you said, there also can be a lot of the learning elements already videotaped. And if you can do it, if you're just trying to demonstrate something, or if you're why not put it online and let everybody see ahead of coming to the class? I think the more and more that we learn about teaching physics and realize that the people have to come to the class prepared. And so that it's a learning from a discussion point of view and from a problem solving point of view, rather than just listening to someone speak, because that can be done, I guess, online, and then have the in-class part for the real sort of hands-on learning.
Yeah, so that's about the format of teaching. But how about the philosophy of teaching? I think I use the right word, because this is the process that now I feel I learn from my students too, and just they learn from me. It's just today, this teacher or professor is not the one that it used to be 100 years ago. Recently I was kind of like looking for some pictures of professors of my professors. I tried to find some pictures. They all are very official, even the clothes with ties and etc. So now it kind of changed, and professor becomes just one of those who is in the classroom. It's not just something like, the highest ranked person. That process changed. And the discussions even, let's say 50 years ago, professor talked and then students had a questions and professor answered. And it was very, very straightforward process. So one is teaching, another is learning, one is speaking, another is listening. Now it changed that interaction changed, those communication changed, communication mode changed. How do you see the future of education as in philosophical aspect?
Well, I think that is, because physics is one of the ones that's being done research on the education, right? And we're in the process of changing our labs around to follow the best practices. That's what I said. I don't think the just giving lectures is working for most students. And so this is why, whether it's peer-to-peer learning or just-in-time learning or all of these other different things, I still think it's best. This is why I would say that you could watch the video and have the class ahead of time for the people who would rather do that than read, although reading is probably shouldn't be a lost art, because reading helps you take the time to think about it too. But I think it is that way of learning, because you have to sort of really get it into your heart and soul of doing it, talking about it, listening to somebody else. Like they say, the best way to learn is for you to teach it. So it's the idea that by having this conversation with each other, the TA, the professor, the student, everybody, we all learn while we teach, and we learn while we're having the discussion. So I think that is changing, and I think there will be less and less just lecturing at a board and more, this is what I call hands-on learning.
Yeah. And I cannot ask about the future of the world in general, not just education, because it's some kind of like not just a feeling, and it looks like Nobel laureates, it's kind of like elite people. They can't see further than probably others, these are special people. So that's why I have to ask you about this one. When I was a student, I was a big fan of Isaac Asimov, and I read one of his science fiction novel. It's called The Naked Sun. That's a kind of like homicide story, homicide investigation story, but it happened in other planet. It's called the Solaria. When I read that time, it was many years ago. For me, it was just a detective story, and that's it. But after this pandemic started, I remember that in that planet, people were self-isolated. And about 20,000 people lived in that planet, but that size was about the Earth. And robots were serving people. For those people, it was the social self-isolation. It was kind of their own decision. And what is important, very interesting, it's mentioned about this 2-meter distance between people. And people even got kind of disgusted if they got closer than those 2 meters. That was kind of like fiction anyway. But what do you think, this social distancing in general, would it have some effect on us as a social being? I mean, do our social behavior depends on the distance between us? This environment, it never happened to humanity, right? What do you think? Can this social distancing, this self-isolation, change us as social creatures? What do you think about that?
Well, I suppose if it goes on for too many years, it would have to change us. I don't know. Luckily for me, I'm kind of a loner, so it's not bothering me as much as it's bothering probably other people. Plus my 2 grown children have moved back here, so we're back to a family of 4. So I think it will make a change if it goes on for too many years. I'm very hopeful for the vaccine, so it doesn't stay there. I also think evolution goes on and we all adapt, right? And so I think we could all adapt to a new way of living if we have to, and we find different ways to be social. We already, I've pointed this out on, I've had to give a few convocation addresses this year over this way, and said, isn't it lucky that it happened now instead of when I was a student, right? Because there would have been no idea of having this video chat. And so we would have been far more isolated without all the technology that we have now. And so, I think we very quickly, all came around to thinking, okay, we can use technology. I mean, people like Parliament argued, can we really use technology? And yes, you really can. If you must, you can. And so I think we're very adaptable. And I think that as things, technology keeps coming in, we absolutely always change to fit with it. I mean, there's always these, the older generation looking at the kids that never take the phones out of their hands. They socialize completely differently than my generation, and my generation had TVs, which my, parents' generation did not. And so they would complain how we spent too much time watching TV when they should have been out having sing-songs and storytellings and all these things they used to do to socialize. And each generation, it keeps changing. And so we're very adaptable. and we'll just change how it works for us going forward.
Yeah, but there are, again, a few things that are kind of like thankful to this pandemic. As I said, it gives, yeah, though I understand that it's many casualties and many bad things happening, but in everything there is kind of like some opportunities.
I think one of the opportunities right now is how important science is. This is one of the things I'm trying to push now, now that I have a platform, is science literacy, right? I think it was getting very scary how the anti-vaccinators were coming on strong, and that the social media was able to, we can all now only watch, or we can all just watch what we want to, right? And so then that reinforces too many things. And I think in most countries, the leaders went, whoa, don't know what we're talking about. Let's leave this to the scientists, and we will take our cues from the scientists. And so all of a sudden, it's helped a lot with people thinking, oh, scientists are important. We do rely on them. We do count on them, right? And those of us wanting vaccines are counting on those types of scientists to get us a vaccine. So I think that's one of the really positive things that have come out of COVID.
Yeah, that's indeed. I mean, it's suddenly in one day, doctors, scientists, biologists, they became kind of celebrities. Though, to be honest, I don't like that word too much, because it's kind of like it changed its meaning even over the years. But yeah, I mean, it's many people started realizing the significance of and importance of science. And as you said, even 10 years ago, if this happened 10 years ago, I can't even imagine how we would teach. Maybe all universities would get closed, and it would be really. But another thing that this pandemic, it's kind of helped us to see many social problems. Inequalities. Apparently, we realize that many people don't have access to the internet. Many students are not able to buy the laptop, and in the families, if they have 3 children and family cannot afford to buy the laptop to each of them, and people cannot pay the bills for the internet. What do you think? This may be political questions. Will governments forget about that right after getting the vaccine, and or it will change it will make some social changes as well?
Well, it'll be up to the people. I mean, again, we like to blame our politicians, but the reality is it is always up to the people. As when people rise up, politicians pay attention. And so this has laid bare some problems, but it will be up to the people to really keep it front and center, because there's always new issues going to come along. When COVID is passed, there will be another big issue that has to be faced. And so, it is always up to the people to push for what they want. And it's easy for us to fall back into complacency. Those of us who are privileged and those of us who do have it easier, it is, we'll go on with our lives. And which is sad, but I think that is just the natural way of it. And so again, the politicians definitely always are looking to be reelected. So the question is, what do we put up there? And, luckily every so often, if you go back to the environment question, Greta Thunberg came along and just stirred everybody up, right? They either were against her or for her or whatever. But she rallied it, right? And at least that was a positive rallying. Unfortunately, the Black Lives Matter took sort of the video of somebody dying, which is such a sad, sad thing, to spark that again. But we do need these catalysts, and then we do need to get together and decide what's important as a whole society. But again, it has to have a majority of the society agreeing with it in order for the politicians to go, oh, yes, we should really be listening to that.
Yeah, it's, I mean, it's, I didn't think about that one, but it's really, again, according to my observation, it looks like uh, when we have more science in our lives, um, we get higher level of equality. I mean, the Zoom, it doesn't make a difference if you are rich or poor or, as
As
you
long as
said,
you
that
can
you,
afford the
yeah,
computer and
yeah.
the
If
internet.
you can get that, if you have a cell phone, you will use it. And uh, what I also had a very good feeling. Many people say that you have to be in the classroom to feel your students, and they have to see you, and it's kind of you get you have better communication. But what I maybe that's just my own feeling. What I realized when I connected from my apartment, not from my office, from my apartment. And my students, they connected from their apartment. Someone had the baby. I had one student, and she said, my office hours are, let's say, from 2 to 4. She said, I have to feed my babies at time. Is that okay if after 6 p.m. when my child sleeps? And I said, okay. So suddenly we kind of became, I wouldn't say the family, but very close. Before I wouldn't even know that this student has a baby or whatever, what's happening, and they wouldn't know anything about my apartment, that I have this one or that one, you know. Uh, it's changed. Again, these are, I would say, good change. And uh, it makes people physically, maybe we are distancing, but in many cases um, we're getting even closer. We have even better communication. uh, Maybe that's also the good side.
Well, actually, I would say that one of the things, though, I mean, from just a social point of view, is that typically we limit ourselves most of the time to the people that we can see in our town. And since this has happened, it's like friends from, all different walks of my life. Great. Well, let's get together for a Zoom party, and we all just talk to each other. And we don't have to worry about whether can we all show up at some town together, or can we all travel to get together again.
Yeah,
Just turn on Zoom and odd we go. So yeah, there's you have to always look for it, but you should always be looking for the positives rather than just
yeah,
always the negatives.
yeah. One of the positives is that I was able to have this interview with you. I don't think it would be possible without this Zoom, without this internet. And again, in all of those, there are, as I said, there is a little contribution of your work. So that is, I imagine it has to be some special feeling that see, this guy had the cell phone, and I did something for him or for her. It's something, really something. And again, I'm very happy for this opportunity. Thank you very much for your time. It was really a pleasure to talk to you. And one of the purposes of the show is that I ask people about the question that I'm looking for, that I want to learn something. And I've learned something today within this hour. Thank you very much.
Well,
Thank you.
thank you for
Thanks
having
for your time.
me.
Thank you.
All the best.